we work a lot with kids who are learning how to study. What's interesting in our schools today is many of our kids are given all of this content, but they're not really taught how to study. And there's a few myths out there in terms of what we believe in terms of the best way to study. So for example, one myth is I just need to review and know all of the content that's on this page. That's my study guide. I call that passive studying. I can look at the page, I can remember everything on that page, so therefore I am ready for the test. Not quite. Knowledge and mastery are two different things. I can watch a basketball game and tell you if they're doing their free throwing correctly. I know this. Can I do a free throw correctly? Not a chance. Knowledge and mastery are two different things. So you want to make sure that your child is studying actively. What does this mean? It means that you're taking the content from that study guide and you're turning it into some other output. And that requires them to actively engage with that content. And there's a number of different ways you can do this. You can do this through using pictures. You can do this through coming up with a practice test. You can use ChatGPT to say, here's my content, give me some quiz questions on this content. So you want to actively be engaging with this content in a different way than it is represented on paper. So that's tip number one. Tip number two, it is always best to study the night before the test because then I'll remember it better. No. Research shows that if you have 3 hours to study for a test, you want to take the 3 hours and split it into 3 separate incidences. So it doesn't have to be 3 different days, but it does have to be at least separated by a day. It's better to study 1 hour in 3 separate days. And what that does is it exercises that retrieval fluency, that ability to remember that content and with ease being able to remember the content. If you do all of that at one sitting or even just in one evening, you're not getting that same practice to retrieve the information when you need it. Myth number 3, you should always study in the same location. Set up your study location, set up your homework location. You always study in that location because that gives you the external signs that this is the place to study. Yes and no. Yes, it's good to have that location that gives you that external sign that this is the place to study. No, in the sense that you do want to study in different locations. Why? Because you associate information with different information in your surroundings with that content. And if you have different associations with that content, you're more likely to be able to retrieve that content when you need it. You're not relying on just that one location that you're sitting in. So it's actually better to study in your room, in the living room, under the kitchen table. You laugh at me, but sometimes just doing something a little crazy can help you to remember that content in a different way. And then the last one I get all the time is, how can my child study with music? They can't study with music. It's not possible to study with music. I will tell you that there's research that shows some people can study with music better. Some people cannot. Some people can study with classical music or rock and roll or whatever their music preference is because it becomes background noise. They're so familiar with it. It almost quiets their brain to have that background noise. And now they're able to focus. When it's completely quiet, their brain can't seem to rein in and stay on task. So that background noise, if you will, that music helps their brain to focus in. This one, it just depends. So make sure that you know the 4 things that in terms of studying. Number 1, make it active. Number 2, split it up over 3 days, at least 3 different times. Number 3, change up your location. Music, it's really your preference.